everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Elevate with C&M Coaching. My name is Maggie. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I have a special topic and some special guests here that we are going to be joined with. First up, I'd like to introduce you to Ginger Lauderman. She is a collections manager for a Byrider. She's been in the collections world for 13 years. Ginger, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. This is great.
And then I also have Jim and Michelle Rhoads here with me today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they have a bucket list of things that they have attached to their
It's getting simpler, Maggie. So yeah, thank you. And we're thrilled to be here as well. I always enjoy spending time with you and talking about these kind of subjects, especially. But so I've done coaching in the buy here, pay here space for 20 plus years. So, folks mostly know me by, my name, Jim Rhoads, but we have a company called White Hat Way. And so going forward, everybody will know us, as White Hat Way, and people can learn. We don't need to go into a lot of that now, except it does really relate to our subject today in terms of what we think about as white hat coaching, white hat approach to customers, and long-term approach to business. So, folks can learn about that at whitehatway.com. But then Michelle, as my business partner, is also here.
Yeah. And I have a very extensive background in customer service of more than a couple of decades through owning my own business and working for different startups and other national companies. So I've really had the opportunity to learn an awful lot about how to work with people that might be in a difficult situation.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So one of the things that I really want to focus on for today's episode is going to be customer service in the collections world. So being, our expertise here at C&M Coaching is listening to and training collections teams. And we hear so many phone calls. Some of the stuff that we hear, you wouldn't even believe that it's real. And other things that we hear compassion and understanding and just an overall, great experience for somebody who might be going through a tough time or just not able to make their payments. And so when I was thinking about who I wanted to have on, I wanted to have a collections manager, somebody who's on the front lines and doing this day to day. And then also people who have, trained others, such as myself and then Jim and Michelle, and experienced working with dealers and owners and collections managers to help them be aware of these things. And I think that, right now it feels like, Ginger, how are you guys as far as your whole collections numbers and things like that going? Are you guys seeing a lot of people needing payment arrangements or promise to pays right now?
Oh, yeah. With the economy the way it is right now, I think that people in general are just struggling with, the inflation, the groceries, and people weren't prepared, I don't think, for this. So as time has gone on, we're kind of past the major part of the pandemic, and we're, I guess, post-pandemic at this point. I just see people struggling on a daily basis, whether it be their pay or just the cost of living in general. They're just struggling, and that's one of the things that we meet with and talk about with my group. This is what we're seeing. What are we going to do? What processes are we going to put in place? Because this is coming down the pike, and how are we going to handle it from here?
Yeah. And are you guys seeing when customers, this is going to be kind of a big blanketed question, but are you guys seeing people actually still communicating with you when they feel like they're struggling, or is there still a lot of people dodging you when you're trying to make phone calls and collect?
I think that is probably, probably 50-50. I don't want to put a number on it, but I feel like people are dodging us a little bit more than we've seen. And what happens is, I think that people generally want to pay. It's just that they don't know what to say and how to explain. Like, I just don't have the money. I don't know where the money's going to come from. And that's why they end up dodging us. I've seen an increase of that. I've also seen an increase of people just throwing up their hands and saying, I can't do this and I'm done.
Yeah, come get the car.
Yes, and that has increased, that actually has increased in the last 60 days more than I've seen in the last 4 years.
Jim, are you seeing kind of the same sort of thing across the board where you've got some clients that are not really having a lot of issues with it, and then others that are like, I don't know what to do. Everybody needs a promise to pay.
I would say, yeah, within our clients, they seem to be pretty stable. What we see across social media, where we interact with, a larger group of dealers, we're seeing a number of them, indicating spikes in repos and delinquencies. So we know that's happening. And I want to kind of refer back to something our Ginger say there about, we believe that customers do want to pay. And I think the best evidence of that is what we saw through the pandemic period when there was extra money coming and people were, at a high, currency rate, very low delinquency. People were paying when they had money. And so I think it just kind of ties back to, what we're seeing now is the fact that people are struggling to do it. It's not that they don't have the desire to pay. They're just struggling.
We teach some basic de-escalation techniques because, and Michelle, you can probably speak to this, being as though you were talking about hearing some difficult situations, but we teach some basic de-escalation techniques. And I feel like a lot of times when we're dealing with collections, that sometimes the collector isn't really listening to what the customer has to say. And that creates more tension in the conversation.
Absolutely. What Jim and I were talking about this morning, that, people first off think that listening is just letting them have their moment to speak. But it's about understanding what the person just said.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference. And so, you see some people that don't even want to give them a chance to speak. But then the next group is those that let them have the chance to speak and then proceed forward as if nothing was said.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
And we're always like, hey, let's listen. So one of the things that I like to teach is to repeat the situation or take some of that verbiage and repeat it back to the customer. That
Correct.
says, I'm listening, I've heard you, and I can't tell you how many times we hear the opposite of that. And then you've got this poor customer that's like, hi, have you heard anything that I've said?
Yeah, and I know we'll get there, Maggie. I think, to me, tone of voice is also part of that. And when we're
Oh,
listening,
yeah.
it's a factor in that. One of the things, and we're followers of Simon Sinek, and one of the things Simon Sinek talks about in listening is that, it's one thing to hear everything that's been said. It's another thing to make the person feel, and he emphasized the word feel, that they
right.
feel that they've been heard.
Right. And
That's a different thing.
I agree with that completely. And Ginger, is that something that you guys kind of talk about when you're having your meetings and you're working on just trying to make sure that we're offering reasonable promise to pays and trying to help people through those difficult times?
Yeah, absolutely. And what Jim said, I mean, the voice tone, I mean, you can tell somebody no, and it sounds reasonable and it doesn't sound terrible. It's all how you deliver the message and your voice tone. So, I agree with that, 100%. If you have a really harsh tone with somebody when you're telling them no, I
Yeah.
think you're going to have more of a pushback. But yeah, we talk about those things when either on one-on-ones, when going over with my staff, and or group meetings when we talk about what issues are coming up at this point.
Exactly. I think this is a great segue into the phone call that I wanted to play for you guys, because you've picked up on several things that actually happen in this call that I'm gonna have to I need you guys to hear this, and I need you to tell me what what your thoughts are on it, because I think that there is so much that happens in these phone calls. And I also think too, to be fair to the collector, a lot of times when this stuff happens, it is happening spur of the moment, right? And they're trying to put their thoughts together as they're listening to a customer. So I do give them a little bit of leeway for that. But you guys have to hear this phone call, and then I want to talk about it and see what it you guys think.
Hello, team lead, record line for quality and training. How can I help you?
He just said for me, he said that he had to get something approved. He had to get something approved for me to pay my car note, pay something on my car note next Friday.
Yeah, is this?
Yes.
Hi, this is the team lead in the escalation recovery division. Mister, your loan on the 2014 Chevy Traverse we financed for you is under review right now. The repossession order may be issued today, and the reason why is because you haven't made a payment, ma'am, since March 14th. We're now in June. That was 84 days ago. We're not waiting till the middle. We're not waiting till the 16th.
My mother just passed, and I have to pay for her funeral.
That doesn't give you the right to not make a payment, ma'am, for 84 days. This is a high-risk subprime loan.
Okay, so you want me to make my no payment and then not pay for my mother's burial? That's what you just said to me?
Are you trying to say that you're exempt from making your payment for 3 months because of death in the family? It's not how it works. That's not how it works. Does it say that in your contract?
You know what? You're going to go to hell. You're going to go to hell. So I want to put the repossession in because that truck is regular anyway. You have a great day.
Ouch.
Ouch.
So let me preface by saying, first off, that this is a collections department where like the first person verified the name, the social. So the account was fully verified before getting to this person. This person is working in the recovery department. They are supposed to be like the last resort for a customer before the vehicle gets repossessed. And the reason that I felt like this was such a perfect opportunity to play this call was because we were talking about voice tone. And Jim, Michelle, what do you guys think about his voice tone?
First off, I was appalled that he did not offer his condolences.
Right.
I mean, that's like the most human response to what she just said.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of reflective of what I see generally across collections in the industry is we fall into a place where it's rather robotic. And so that's kind of what I heard there was kind of following a script almost. And that just doesn't, when we think about the word compassion, which you mentioned, we obviously don't hear any compassion in there. And I just think that, I also heard them saying, and I don't know if this is just their posture, but I heard him saying he was in the recovery department or,
he said
escalation
recovery division.
Yeah. It's, if that really is a separate division and now we're in an escalation period, I think all of us on the call today probably feel like in an escalation or recovery, our ability to resolve that by listening and bringing compassion and understanding I feel like it's going to increase our chances of resolving that successfully. So bringing this tone only pushes the parties farther apart.
Right.
The other part of tone that I think that it's a good thing to address is that there's tone in the voice. There's also tone in the message. And, you can say I remember teaching my kids all the time. It's not what you say, but how you say it. Yeah. And that's just in the tone and the inflection in your voice, but it's the words you choose that can work your way around some of the higher push button points where you're gonna create some level of, like the lady said, go to blazes.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I understand, and we've been wanting to get this in for this many days, and having the tone of compassion, but also in the way of how the words you use to be able to express where we need to go, next, because there are some things like you teach that we have to express.
Yeah.
There are points that have to be expressed, but it's not just in the tone, but it's also in the words, the way that you choose.
I have lots more thoughts, but I know you want to bring Ginger in.
Yeah, Ginger, what did you think about this? I'm dying to know.
Wow. I mean, the voice tone, there's not a lot. There's so much that, it's just, wow. Here's the issue. Even if they're in the recovery department, this may be a situation where they could have easily got this lady back on track. She was in a very bad situation. Whatever happens, in those months between, March and June, and she had a death in the family. And it just goes back to, you just don't understand or don't know what everybody's going through. And if he would have shown some compassion, this call could have very, very well went in a direction where either we started collecting on this account and getting money back in the door, or we could have, worked out something where we could have got our collateral back. But my guess is she was calling because she was willing to jump back in and start paying. So there's
Mhm.
just so many missed opportunities. Not only did he just lose all rapport that he would ever have with this
Right.
customer, but he just lost money. You know,
Both.
the collection part of it, he lost that. Now, somebody else might be able to come in and pick it back up, but we don't know now. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? You when you have that customer on the phone, it may be the last time you talk to them. Try to make it the best call you can, and that way they want to call you back. They
Right.
want to make those arrangements with you.
And I think too, like, yeah, okay. When I listened to this phone call, the first thing I thought was, besides his like lack of compassion and, like Michelle said, just that humanization of the fact that I'm so sorry to hear about that. What was the point of the phone call? Did it serve any purpose at all whatsoever? I mean, sure, she was 84 days past due. That is a very, very long time. And maybe she had communicated with someone else beforehand. Didn't really seem like he looked at the notes of the account at all because he went right into attack mode. But what point did this call have? Nothing happened.
Right.
You got
It
two
was just
super
to say
frustrated
bad on
people.
you. He
Yeah.
was just, you're naughty. You're naughty.
That's exactly what my thought was. Is like it was like I want to hurry up and get my points across so I can reprimand you for what you've done wrong.
Did you guys notice that he never even asked her? Like, we usually say something like, I express my condolences. Why don't we talk for a second about what we've got going on? So, what caused you to initially get behind back in June? There was no questioning of the customer at all whatsoever. Right after he confirmed her identity, he went right into, this is my fancy title. This is what I do. You're at the end of the rope. And then basically just going from there, this is unacceptable. Didn't even seem to be really interested in all in why she missed her payment, which I feel like sometimes, and Ginger, you'll have to tell me if this is something that you guys kind of utilize as well, but to me it feels like that why is part of how we know what to do today and then down the road as far as these customers' payments are concerned.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in my experience, and I have a few collectors that are really, really good at it. That, even when I'm listening to their calls, like I never even thought about asking that question. And
Mhm.
asking questions and getting the customer to talk and tell you what's going on. Right off the bat, she tells them that the reason why, but there was more to it than just the death. You know,
Mhm.
there was more that caused her not to pay, but we never got to that point because he got right into like, you're bad. you
Yeah.
know you did wrong, and I'm going to tell you why you did wrong, and it doesn't excuse your behavior.
Mhm.
But asking questions and just trying to get information, it also lets the customer know that you're engaging and you want to help them, you want to work something out. Getting that information from them, obviously he missed all those opportunities.
I didn't even hear him give her an amount.
No.
I mean, he
Right.
didn't even tell her how much she owes. Jim, Michelle, do you guys have anything to add to those comments?
Yeah, I just think when I hear that, it's like, if this is the end of the line, then and first of all, in our training, we don't advise ever threatening repossession. Like that happened
No.
here. You heard him say we're going to do that. Well, I think we all understand. I don't think it has to be stated that that's the potential outcome here. So I'm thinking, so we're on the verge of repossession. We could order the repo order later today. So this is our opportunity to avoid that. And I think I just didn't hear anything that suggested a resolution or invited a resolution. So that's kind of the thing that, when I think of collectors and collection team, like I think of them as chief problem solvers.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't hear anything here to identify the problem, identify possible solutions, and the tone just pushed her away. And of course, this is an exaggerated example with a death in the family, but I think we could apply the same thing to most any scenario where, gosh, I'd be thrilled to have a conversation with the customers 84 days past due. I probably haven't been able to talk to them. And
Mm-hmm.
so now I get a chance to talk to them. It's my chance to identify the problem and go to work solving it. And it was just totally missed.
And
Mhm.
she was like she was taking the opportunity to reach out. Like
Right.
obviously she was hoping to have some sort of a resolve here. I have another call and I didn't pull this one up, but it's the exact same collector. And what happened in this scenario was this customer had called in and spoken to a collections rep, and that rep had agreed to let them do a split payment. Well, apparently the vehicle was pretty severely past due. She calls up to make her payment, gets transferred to this same rep you guys just heard, and he basically tells her, I'm not going to honor this promise to pay that you've established. It's not enough money. I'm coming to pick up your car today unless you pay the whole thing. Despite the fact that she had a previous conversation of record with a previous collector who authorized the promise to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this is not, I don't think that you're going to solve, we've been training this gentleman. You don't hear that in these calls, do you?
No.
And I'm always reminded those kind of scenarios, like a wise attorney who's passed some years ago, but he used to say that, as buy here, pay your dealers, we should work hard to make sure to keep our customers out of attorneys' offices.
Mm-hmm.
And so that scenario you just described, I can't think of a way to push a customer into an attorney's office any faster,
Yeah, there's something I think that we should also consider is that a lot of collectors are paid bonused based on their performance. And so collectors, if they can get outside training, but they're going to try different tips and there are different tricks to be able to get that money in.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a distinct possibility this person realized that strong arming actually got the money in and it was better for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's just, ugh.
Yeah.
Every time I hear this call, I hate it even more. But I mean, Ginger, have you had that ever happen at your store where one, collector has made a promise to pay with someone and you've looked it over and you've thought, oh, this isn't a very good one?
I mean, we've had situations like that. Most of my staff has been with me for, a number of years. But as a rule of thumb, another collector makes a promise and we've already had that conversation and that's what the customer agreed upon. We try not to go and break that agreement. We stick with it. And then if that plan didn't work out, then we work from another one from there.
Yeah.
Coming in after the fact and saying, you know what, that's not going to work for me. So either you pay up or I want the car, like Jim said, that's you get into a really legal situation at that point because you're agreeing to something and then you're just coming back in and saying, no,
Yeah.
I'm refusing that. And when you get into that word refusal, like it can open a can of worms that people don't want to open.
Mm-hmm. And I've always been very pro customer service when it comes to obviously sales, but also when it comes to collections, because over the years of training and listening to different phone calls, I've really noticed that those collectors that do establish rapport with their customers are a lot more likely to get phone calls in times of trouble because they're not terrified of speaking to someone. If this were me, I would be terrified to call this guy if he was my rep. I wouldn't want to call him for anything. Even if I was 20 cents short, I'd be afraid to call. And that's, I feel like, how you get more people dodging you and avoiding you, aside from the fact that you still have those, the anxiety behind it from being in that position in the first place. That's something that, the nicest person in the world isn't going to solve. But I still feel like having empathy is really, really important when it comes to collections. Do you guys all agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's definitely part of what we teach. I think it kind of ties into, I talk a lot about, for years, we've done articles from way back about, most of us would think of P&P as policies and procedures, right? And so that's going to be what drives our function most of the time in the collection department. But when we add what I call the third P, which is philosophy, now you start to talk about culture, attitude, approach, and how is that affecting the policies and procedures, the attitude, of the people that are doing the job. And so that's where it's kind of tricky for us in this conversation, I think, is, we certainly we want to ask collectors within whatever the philosophy is to be empathetic and those kind of things. But we also know that there can be pressures, right? And Michelle mentioned pay plans can certainly apply pressures in certain areas and other things can be a factor there. But I think I'm just, it goes to philosophy. It's like, what is the foundational philosophy and culture of the company and what is the outlook on customer service, and how's that going to affect the work that if I came to work, in a department like Ginger's and was going to be a collector, how are my hands tied because of the company philosophy, in terms of the policies and procedures I operate within.
And I think Michelle made a great point when she said it feels like he probably, in terms of the pay plan, it does seem a little bit like he has found success in the strong arm. But I have to say that when I listen to these calls and I hear absolutely zero accomplishment in them, I think, how can that be the case? I guess from a psychology standpoint, I can't wrap my brain around how you think treating someone like disrespectfully is going to help you collect cash. Now, on the flip side of that, I have lots of phone calls like this too, angry customers being nasty to the rep, and the rep just having no problem handling it, like a pro. And I think that those are the ones where it's understandable that a rep can get frustrated and not really know what to do. And Ginger, do you guys have issues with that frequently, where you have a customer that's just super agitated, you can't do anything to calm them down, nothing is right, and they just have to get escalated to you because they can't treat their collector with a shred of respect?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it, over the years. I feel probably last year, it was a little bit more. I just feel like people were just angry in general. But I think that, once they get escalated to me, it's just letting people vent. They want somebody to vent to. And unfortunately, it has to be somebody, that doesn't really deserve it, but it ends up being that way. And I think the best approach is just listening, because you're not going to solve anything by matching their level by any means.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. You guys have anything to add to that?
I would just say, we've always in collections, and it's an easy thing to say, and it's a hard thing. These are human beings that we hire in our collection department, but we ask them, try not to take it personally. And Michelle and I recently started following this Ted Lasso series, and I could tell you.
Oh, I love Ted Lasso. Oh my gosh.
So, he talks
great.
about being a goldfish, right? You know that expression. So be a goldfish,
Yeah.
forget about it.
The other one is be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah. But it's like, it's the idea is simple enough to say, and it's challenging as human beings who might have to walk one off and then come back, but it's hard not to carry the frustration of the last call into the next one, as Ginger knows quite well.
Yeah, and I know so I have a call here. I wasn't going to play this one, but I think that this is important because, like I said, there's two sides to the coin here. This is a customer that is angry for sort of no reason, in my opinion. So let me play this one. Please note, speed and pitch have been changed to protect the customer and the dealership.
Thank you for calling. How can I help you?
Just process the stupid payment.
I'm sorry, who am I speaking with?
You guys know exactly who this is, and I am not doing this all over again.
This is a recorded line. I have to verify your address and last four of your social.
Oh my God. But I've done this 50 million times, and you guys keep it hanging up on me, so...
Could you please verify the address on your account?
There.
Perfect. And you said you want to run a payment today?
What?
You would like to process a payment today?
Yep, so I can degrade your company and make sure you guys don't get another penny from another customer.
Okay, you don't need to cuss at me, sir. And what was the last four of the card you would like to use?
Not one that's on there.
We're adding a new card.
For this one payment, do not add it to the account.
Okay, you don't need to raise your voice at me. I'm trying to assist you.
Well, if you guys would assist me the proper way, I wouldn't get this way.
And what's the card number? And does this card have your name on it?
Yes. Worst company in the world. Jesus Christ.
Okay, Do you authorize a payment for $30 plus the $3.99 transaction fee on card?
I guess, since you guys are a horrible company and don't like customers.
I do apologize. Do you feel that way? I need a yes or no.
I clearly said yes, since you guys don't care about the customers and are a horrible company.
Well, that was successful, and I really hope your day gets better. All right, you have a good day.
Thoughts, guys? What do you guys, anybody have any comments about this one?
Well, the attitude that he brings clearly didn't start today. It's based on a cumulative, interaction with the company is what I'm hearing. And my approach to that would be, I think keep in mind that before I was ever in the car business, I was in the retail and sporting goods business. And way back, I developed this attitude that the customer's perception is our reality. And so that just means, regardless of what developed this attitude, like that's what we're faced with today because of whatever's happened, historically. Doesn't mean he's right, but it is his perception.
I would also say that call too would be a really great opportunity for a post-mortem for the company too. Is like, let's take a look at what their experience was in the past, and see how we can make that better. Because because obviously it sounded like that they were very frustrated from multiple attempts. And so is that true that did they have multiple attempts, and how can we make it better so that doesn't happen with other customers?
And it would be hard for any of the four of us to get through to this person because of the attitude the lack of trust that they have. So if any one of us tried to come, it would just be challenging to get through and really have them accept that you really are coming from a place of compassion, desire to solve the problem. Just hard to get there.
Yeah, I do really appreciate how she handled the call. She was calm. She went through the things. She set her boundaries. Sir, I can't have you do this. And then got off the phone call in a pleasant way because, at that point, it's okay for her to just get off the phone call.
Ginger, what did you think?
I mean, I agree. I mean, I think she handled herself really well. I mean, he was not pleasant at all. I don't know what the backstory is, and
I'm guessing he had sworn probably at a bunch of other people, which is why he was getting hung up on. That would be my assumption here. I mean, they're not going to just randomly hang up on somebody.
Right. Understanding. I mean, because that's understandable because I mean, he was not pleasant. He just happened to get somebody that willing to step up and, be as professional as possible. And I think she did a bang up job as nasty as he was being to her. And that's a phone call that, somebody would probably get done with the phone call and just be so frustrated. And I think that's probably where somebody would need to walk away a little bit and just breathe because, if you go into another phone call after that, like that it could carry into that next phone call, but she handled herself so well.
I thought so too, which is why I grabbed it. I was going to play just a call where a customer needed to do a split payment and they took the promise to pay and it went well. But then I thought, given the fact that we're talking about reps being rude, let's play a call where a customer is also not the nicest. What I kind of wish was that we did know exactly what the backstory was, but I also sort of wish, kind of what Michelle said, that we approach this from kind of the other side of the coin and go, hey, customer, we want to talk about what happened and we want to take steps to make sure it doesn't happen again in the future. And that might have happened. I don't know. The call is scrambled. I don't even know what store it is anymore. But, the point of it being, how did we get here and why? He wasn't even paying that much. It was like $30. So, how did this happen? And highly likely he was belligerent to someone ahead of time. That's why he said, you keep hanging up on me. I like that she stayed calm throughout the whole thing. So, Michelle, do you have any tips for anybody who has a customer like this, or anything that you've seen in your experience sort of work to handle a situation like this? Because I do think this is a good example, because I know that this happens to collectors. It's a tough job.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one is to breathe, because when you're starting to get frustrated, your breath starts to change into shallow breaths. And if you can continue to breathe deeply during the entire conversation, that will actually help your nervous system stay calm. So breath, just make sure that you breathe, listen and ask questions, take notes,
Mhm.
If there is something that needs to be addressed, like the first call, that kind of thing, take the time to be able to listen to them, go through the things that you need to go through, set your boundaries. I love that she did that in a very calm way. Sir, I'm sorry, but it's not okay for you to
Mhm.
talk to me that way. And I'm just here to help.
Yep.
And I think too that one of the words that really can be used in such a beautiful way with our customer service reps and collections is the word help. I'm here to help. How
Mhm.
can I help? That's and that reminding them, I'm just trying to help. I'm just
Mhm.
trying to help. And so that, and then when you're done, I would tell my team all the time, it's like, if you need to be taken off of phones, because we had on a big system, and they would go from one call to the next call, is like, if you need time, just send me a personal message and take 10 minutes and walk
Mhm.
away, go for a walk, do whatever you need to do. And then that way you can step into the next call with like a reset, that
Mhm.
Yeah.
goldfish attitude.
And Maggie, I think if I were hearing this through the ears of a dealer, dealer owner here, I'm thinking I didn't hear anything that leads me to think that that's going to change. That customer is going to have the same attitude on the
Mhm.
next phone call in all likelihood. So I'd love to have some sort of escalation invitation. Would you like me to have a manager reach out to? Clearly, you're very frustrated.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I'd like to be able to escalate and see what can be done to solve the problem, because who knows, there may be 3 years left on this customer's contract. None of
Yeah.
us want to be like that the remainder of the way. So
No.
I would love to try to escalate and find a way to. And look, there'll be some customers we're never going to make happy. We all know that can happen, but certainly I didn't hear anything that took a step in that direction.
Right. Ginger, do you have any thoughts to add to this?
Jim did make a good point, adding that to the end of like escalating. And, we don't know necessarily, maybe she did when she got off the phone,
Mhm.
but I would definitely want to find out what happened. If that was one of my account reps and in one of my customers, I would definitely want to know what led up to this behavior. And
Mhm.
because, like Jim said, we might be in this for the next 3 years and they're not going to get over it, obviously, by the next phone call.
Mhm.
And that's maybe where, a supervisor calls back and they're like, hey, I hear you're frustrated. Oh, I just want to reach out to you, see if we can work something out. But
Yeah.
that behavior is easily, could just ruin the rest of an account rep's day if she is not trained to, get up, walk away if she needs to, take a
Mhm.
breath. Like I said, she did an excellent job, but those calls are difficult and they wear on people.
Mhm.
And they wear on account reps. I've seen it, and it's unfortunate people act that way, and it's not a direct of the particular girl he was talking to, but she's the one that got the brunt of it. And
Mhm.
training people to be able to handle themselves that way is a big deal.
And one thing, Maggie, that I hear in that is it kind of confirms what we've always said about how, our collections department have a far greater impact on our repeat and referral business than our
Mhm.
sales department ever will. And so this is why, you can hear that in this tone of this conversation. I mean, I don't think any of us want this customer going forth and talking about our business in that way. So we either genuinely care about solving whatever that problem is, or we don't as a company. And so if we do, I would hope we'd have a method to have a chance to talk to that person and begin to resolve some of that.
Yeah, and it's funny because I see a lot of situations on the other side, even in the sales aspect of things. For example, we recently did a 20 group meeting and we found several dealers in the group that weren't receiving internet leads. Like the leads were going through, but they weren't pushing through to the CRM. And because they were using overseas reps, the reps didn't know enough to go, hey, we haven't seen any online activity recently. And I think some of that responsibility falls back on the collectors too, to go, hey, I don't know if this call was great. So I feel like we need to speak up about it too. If something like that happens, I want reps to feel comfortable enough to go to their boss and say, well, this just happened, and have a process in place to kind of handle those things. The other day, when I called up to actually schedule the recording of this podcast, I spoke to someone that works for Ginger that I trained a very long time ago, and she answered the phone, and I said, "Oh, you're still there, good for you. Collections is a tough business." And she's like, "I don't really feel like a collector." She's like, "I'm kind of in the people business. Like, I'm here to help people, and I take it one day at a time, one customer at a time." And I thought, well, that is really, really great advice coming from a collector. And I think it kind of speaks to how Ginger does lead her team and is obviously there to support them and help them. And I was just surprised to hear her voice, because it's been a couple of years since I spoke to her, and I see a lot of turnover in collections. And Jim and Michelle, being that you guys are consultants, I assume that you guys also see a lot of turnover. I can't ask Ginger this question because she still has the exact same team she did when I trained her like 6 years ago.
Yeah. We do see that, but it's part of what we teach. I mean, we talk about in our line of work what I started calling a 10-year approach. So that means, when we can try to have, all parts of the business be permeated by this sort of 10-year outlook with customer relations and really with the team as well.
Mhm.
Like thinking about, nothing gets too big. It's like we think in terms of this customer being with us for 10 years. And so it lets us kind of keep the issue of the day in perspective
Mhm.
and try to really, bring a longer range attitude. And I think that also is in terms of the morale of a collections team. I think those kind of things can also help that, because when we know we've got the support of management and ownership,
Mhm.
we're playing a long game here, and we genuinely care about the success of our customers, then that's going to help us navigate all these, bumps in the road.
Yeah. Ginger, what do you think about that? Because I do feel like I know your boss. And so I also feel like you definitely have that. Do you feel like that has contributed to some of the success of your department?
Oh, absolutely. I do. My staff, like I said, they have a lot of tenure. They've been here for many years with me, and we've seen the rough parts. We've seen the great parts, and we stick together and we come up with plans. And I learn just as much from them as they learn from me. And I think that helps. I like to engage. One thing that I have implemented, even though they've been here for quite a long time with me, is just one-on-ones, and sometimes just talking about accounts. And we do that at least every other week with an account rep, rotating them out. And I just think it's really important to engage and talk about some of these scenarios and put our heads together. Like, what do we do with this, and where do we go from here? And communication is just everything.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think as far as dealers and operators and things like that go, Jim, Michelle, do you guys have any advice when it comes to how they can sort of lead their collections team, kind of in closing here? And Ginger, I'm going to ask you the same question, but as a collections manager. So what do you guys think as far as, principals and owners and things like that? What can they do best to support their collections team to make sure they are providing good customer service, but still obviously collecting as well?
I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is, and this again ties back to company philosophy and kind of structure. There can be financial pressures within an organization, borrowing based, limitations and things like that would cause us to put pressure. But generally with dealers, I'd be encouraging them to install a high degree of flexibility. And as Ginger said, communication. So we're going to communicate, and then we're going to hear from people, and we're going to be adaptive and try to find solutions. And sometimes that means flexibility in terms of duration of allowing a customer to catch up, for example. So these would be things that I think, is going to have an impact. And these are tools, and everybody's got their limitations, as we talked about with policies and procedures. But generally speaking, I would say let's bring an approach that gives us the ability to be flexible. And then, as Michelle's heard me talk about, then the challenge becomes, we have to walk that line about when do we become too flexible? But I would always err on the side of flexibility, cooperation, compassion. And so that's kind of the general idea I would bring.
I would also, to add to that the dealers need to really support their collectors, and the collectors setting boundaries with their team, and that the dealer's going to really fully back their collector up, and that dealers, it's an important part to teach collectors, not just the word tracks and not just these are all the straight line things that you need to do and to be, to be kind and compassionate, but also teaching them about the things that we can do just in normal interaction about breathing, that people tend to match the energy of the person that they're talking to. And so if they're
Yes.
staying calm and part of being calm is to breathe and to remind their people to be curious, not judgmental. And then that last one is be a goldfish, to teach them like, let it go if you need a second. And that because collectors are the front line for a dealer, is that the collectors of all the people in their team should feel the support the greatest from the dealer.
Absolutely. And everyone should go watch Ted Lasso because there's
I know, I love it.
so many great life lessons in that show. And I hope they renew it for another season because there's so much positivity in it. And I feel like a lot of, I don't watch like crime documentaries and I'm not watching CSI and stuff like that. I'm more of a Ted Lasso style TV person and, believe and all that good stuff. And I love some of the advice in there. So Ginger, what do you think? What kind of advice do you have for some collections managers or even collectors out there that, might be struggling with the customer service aspect of things and maintaining good customer service while also still, of course, trying to collect money or manage a team trying to do that?
Jim and Michelle bring up very good points. The only thing that I think that I could add to it is with supporting them, sitting down and you're questioning what a rep is saying to a customer. Sit down with them, pull up a couple calls and talk about it. Talk about what you could have done different or any kind of coaching that you can give them. I think that helps them long term in continuous training, in reiterating any kind of training, any kind of policies or procedures. I just feel like, in collections, something's always changing and you got to keep up with the times and that momentum going with your staff and make sure that you're communicating as much as you can, and meeting with them. I think that meeting with them and communication is probably the best key to supporting them. And in general, just supporting them like, hey, how are you doing? Do you need anything from me? What can I do? It's a tough job and people get frustrated and can bring you down. And what can I do to make it better for you?
And I think you brought up something earlier that obviously I'm a big fan of, but you said that you sit with them one-on-one, and I think that's really important. And my advice would be you guys listen to phone calls. Please listen to phone calls. And if you're not recording them, do it because you really aren't able to fully support your team if you don't know what customers are saying to them and how they're handling those situations. And it is by far one of the biggest opportunities for training because you can actually hear both sides of the conversation and know what's going on and know where weaknesses might lie. Or you may even have somebody on your team that's super excellent, like that last call we heard, at handling those types of customers. And maybe you want that person to be a line of defense in those situations or somebody that handles those calls when they come in internally. So I think this was great advice. I really appreciate you guys all joining me here today and taking time out of your busy schedule to talk about this. I just think it's been something that I've seen. I mean, obviously you can hear the phone calls I played. We've been hearing all kinds of crazy stuff like this. And I just really wanted to highlight the fact that I want customer service in your calls. And I do think that it will help improve your collections and your collections morale and your customers' morale and the likelihood that your customer will feel comfortable picking up the phone and calling you. So thank you, Jim and Michelle, for being here today. And thank you so much to you too, Ginger. I really appreciate you guys providing your insight and advice.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you again to Jim and Michelle Rhoads and Ginger Lauderman for joining us here on this episode of Elevate with C&M Coaching. I do hope that you feel like you learned something from this episode if you're a collector or a dealer principal or owner or even a collections manager. I really want to highlight the fact that we will catch more bees with honey than vinegar. And so I do think welcome calls are really important. I really think that establishing a relationship between the collector and the customer is really important. And I think if you have your collections department structured where they're usually speaking with the same person when they're calling in, you're going to see a better success rate when that customer runs into tough times. at them being able to actually communicate with their collector instead of avoiding them. So thank you again. I know this was a longer episode, but I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to it. And I am in the process right now of trying to reach out to several call tracking companies so that I can interview them and give you guys all a chance to hear the different things that they have to offer to make an educated decision about recording calls. Successfully, I have reached out to CallDrip. I have put in emails to several other companies like Dealer Center, and I have not heard back from their PR departments. But I want to give these companies an opportunity to talk about what they offer because so many dealers out there are not recording phone calls. And this is something that we have got to change because this is the lifeline to your business. This is where you can find out what's happening in your collections calls and your sales calls. And it is the only window into what is going on. And you can't be everywhere all the time. So please record your phone calls. So I'm going to continue to work on that in the back end, and hopefully it is going to be up soon. And I really look forward to having that podcast and hopefully having that conversation with these people if they would return my emails. Maybe they all need mystery shops too. Thank you again for joining us on this episode of Elevate with C&M Coaching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you again real soon.